An unexpected act by a young doctor transformed the care of a famous female billionaire in a coma. Miraculously, she stirred awake, and what followed was nothing short of extraordinary. The constant hum of medical equipment filled the intensive care unit at St. Augustine's, its rhythmic beeps the only sign of life in the otherwise sterile room. Lila Green lay motionless, her dark hair standing out against the pristine white sheets. For 6 long months, Lila had been trapped in a coma, with the mystery surrounding her accident hanging over her like an unyielding shadow. Nurses moved with a practiced routine, except for one determined man, Dr. Ryan Parker. He stood at her bedside with a clenched jaw, his white coat hanging loosely over a faded shirt that betrayed his many sleepless nights. His intense eyes drifted over the bandages wrapped around Lila's chest, now yellowed and stiff from neglect, as his fingers hesitated just above them, laden with tension. "Dr. Parker, wait a minute," said Sandra, the head nurse, her tone sharp. "You can't just change her bandages however you please. There's a protocol you must follow." Ryan shot back, his eyes alight with defiance. "Protocol? She's been lying here for 6 months with these bandages too tight that they're even restricting her breathing. I'm not worried about the rules. I'm focused on saving her." Sandra's lips pressed into a thin line. Lila Green isn't just any patient. She's a high-profile figure. One wrong move and her family, who aren't even here, could suffer. Dead. "Then let them fire me," Ryan muttered, snapping as he gestured toward the bandages. Before anyone could stop him, he picked up a pair of sterile scissors and carefully cut through the old fabric. As the bandages peeled away, faint red marks appeared on Lila's pale skin. Ryan's breath hitched. It was clear she had been slowly suffocating under the weight of hospital bureaucracy. Sandra's exasperated sigh barely registered as Ryan's skilled hands replaced the old bandages with fresh ones, snug enough to support her, yet not tight enough to hinder her breathing. His fingertips briefly brushed her skin, a fleeting touch of warmth against the clinical chill of the room. The atmosphere grew quiet, the tension hanging heavy between them. Sandra watched, her protests subsiding, as Ryan stepped back and wiped his hands on his coat. His gaze remained fixed on Lila's face until the heart monitor stuttered, a single beep stretching into a rapid succession. 60, then 65, then 70. Ryan leaned closer, his pulse racing as he noticed a slight hitch in Lila's chest and her lips parting ever so slightly, a subtle sign that life was returning. In a near whisper he murmured, "What on earth?" For the very first time in 6 months, Lila Green was changing, and Ryan had broken the long, suffocating silence that had held her captive. Later that night, the ICU glowed with a soft blue light as the machines hummed like restless ghosts. Ryan sat in a shadowed corner, hunched over a tablet, his tired features etched with lingering questions. Although Lila's heart monitor had calmed after that startling spike, the image of her surging pulse kept replaying in his mind, as if she had somehow sensed his intervention. He scrolled through 6 months' worth of scans and medical notes. Lila Green, age 32, had been involved in a serious car accident on a rainy highway. Her sleek car totaled, no witnesses around, leaving nothing but a wreck and a deep coma behind. The CT scans showed only a mild concussion and a few bruises, nothing severe enough to justify her prolonged state. A neurologist's note casually read, "Persistent vegetative state. Cause unclear." But that wasn't enough for Ryan. Rubbing his eyes, he replayed the moment he'd changed her bandages, wondering if easing her breathing had triggered something in her. No, it felt like something deeper had been set in motion. A gnawing suspicion began to tighten his chest. What if her coma wasn't entirely natural? What if someone had deliberately kept her down? Pacing the room, his sneakers squeaking on the hard floor, Ryan studied Lila's still form, the steady hiss of the ventilator, her face both sharp and serene. She was a tech titan who had once conquered both Wall Street and Silicon Valley, and with that came enemies, rivals, and countless people with a stake in her empire. Could one of them have wanted her silenced? The idea hit him hard. Perhaps it was a case of subtle, sinister drugs keeping her locked away, a power play hidden behind hospital walls where the rich often played by their own rules. If that were true, Ryan couldn't trust anyone in that institution. Determined to uncover the truth alone, he slipped into a dim hallway toward the supply room. The creaking door revealed shelves lined with vials of morphine and saline. Everything seemed ordinary until, behind a stack of gauze, he discovered an unmarked vial, half full of a clear liquid, with no label. His heart pounded as he realized this vial was not standard issue. Quickly, he pocketed the vial and returned to his office, where he called his lab technician friend, Jake. "It's 2 in the morning, Jake grumbled into the phone. "But what's up?" "Analyze this for me," Ryan whispered, promising it would be off the record. By morning, at a shabby coffee shop, Ryan handed over the mysterious vial. Jake swirled it in his hand. "No label?" he asked. "Just run the test and make it fast," Ryan insisted. 2 days later, Jake called back from the cafeteria, his tone low and laced with concern. "It's a low-dose anesthetic. It's used to keep someone sedated without knocking them completely out." "What's this about?" Ryan's stomach sank. "Thanks, Jake," he managed, his mind reeling. "A sedative, perfect for quiet sabotage. Someone close to her had done this, and while he needed more proof, it was a start." That very night back, in the haze of the ICU, Lila remained unchanged, her face hauntingly blank. Ryan sat close by, the vial heavy in his pocket, and whispered, "I'll get to the bottom of this, whether you can hear me or not." His voice was rough with determination. He didn't know who was behind it or why, but he vowed to fight for her. Although the monitor beeped steadily, that earlier spike rang in his head like a battle cry. Outside, rain pounded the hospital windows with a relentless roar that drowned out the beeping of machines, while lightning streaked through the blinds, casting dramatic shadows over the room where Ryan clutched his clipboard. Despite having been on shift for 16 exhausting hours at St. Augustine's, Lila's condition kept him alert. Her chart lay open, covered in numbers and notes, but his eyes remained fixed on her still form, pale, with dark hair cascading over the pillow, and a ventilator steadily hissing life into her lungs for 6 months straight. Ryan rose, stretching, and grabbed his stethoscope for a routine checkup. He crossed the room as the storm outside rumbled in the distance and pressed the stethoscope to her chest. Her pulse registered at 62, and her oxygen level was stable and normal. Adjusting her blanket, he was startled when a flash of lightning illuminated her face, causing her eyelids to twitch. Ryan froze, holding his breath as a faint flutter stirred his imagination. He leaned in, waiting for something, anything, but heard only silence. Then, as he straightened up, Lila's lashes parted and her dark eyes blinked open, hazy yet alive. His heart pounded as the stethoscope clattered to the floor. "Lila," he whispered, her gaze locking onto his with wide, searching eyes. He quickly shined a pen light into her pupils. They constricted slowly but definitely. Tapping her knee, he saw her leg jerk faintly. She was awake, aware after 6 long months. "Holy!" He stopped, his voice trembling. He paced and then returned, his eyes filled with a mix of relief and disbelief as she continued to watch him. Despite her confusion and inability to speak, thanks to the tube silencing her, her expression blended fear with relief. Something deeper stirred within him. Was it truly a miracle? Had the sedative been overcome by his intervention, or was it pure chance? Either way, she was back. Then it hit him. If someone had drugged her, they'd act if they knew. His jaw tightened. "No one yet, Sandra," he murmured to himself. "I'll protect her and find whoever did this. Our secret's safe for now." Pulling a chair close, he lowered his voice to a calm, reassuring tone. "You're safe. I'm Dr. Ryan Parker. Can you hear me?" A slow blink answered him, and he smiled faintly. "Don't move too much, okay? You've been out for a while." Another blink followed. Carefully, he moistened her lips with a swab, and her eyes softened. "Thank you," she managed, and he gently propped up her pillows. "I've been here for you," he added, settling in. He began recounting stories, the way the storm had spilled coffee, tales of a stray dog, simple memories from med school. She started to understand. Her lips even twitched into a hint of a smile. Resting his hand on hers, he murmured, "You're tough. We'll get through this." Her weak grip held his in return, a delicate but determined trust. His throat tightened as he sat with her, the world outside shifting in the pounding rain, yet both of them remained awake. As the hospital corridors buzzed with the chaos of midday, trays clattering, phones ringing, voices overlapping, Ryan's focus sharpened. He strode toward the administrative wing, a thin manila folder clutched under his arm. The past week had blurred into late nights and secretive investigations, all piecing together the puzzle behind Lila's coma. Every clue pointed to one person: Ethan Moore, Lila's younger brother. Ethan was a smooth, polished man in his late 20s, always impeccably dressed in tailored suits with a confident smile. As her only sibling, he had taken charge of her vast tech empire after her accident, but his manner had set off alarm bells for Ryan. The deeper he dug, the uglier the picture became. Ethan had been in the hospital too often, visiting at odd hours, always alone. Then there was that vile sedative Ryan had found. The dots began to connect. Ethan had both the motive and the means to keep his sister out of the picture. Ryan's breakthrough came one morning when he convinced a security guard to let him review the security footage from months ago. The grainy video was damning. It showed Ethan in a dimly lit hallway, discreetly handing a small vial to a nervous nurse named Jenna, who worked on Lila's rotation. Ryan's pulse raced as he watched Ethan's hand casually pat Jenna's shoulder, as if sealing a secret deal. Later that day, he cornered Jenna in the break room, with a hidden recorder in his pocket. "I really didn't want to do this," Jenna stammered, her eyes darting around. "He said it was just to help you rest until you woke up soon and even gave me $5,000 to keep quiet." Her voice cracked as she admitted the secret had dragged on far longer than she had expected. That confession, combined with the footage, was priceless. Ryan printed out still images from the video, each one clearly time-stamped, and stuffed them into his folder, which now burned against his side with evidence. Ethan wasn't just careless. He was a predator who had drugged his own sister to steal her work. Ryan's fists clenched as he stormed into the executive lounge, where Ethan was meeting with hospital administrators. "This ends now," he declared, pushing through the glass doors. The room fell silent as all eyes turned. Ethan lounged at the head of a sleek, polished table, a pristine suit and a coffee cup in hand. For a brief moment, his smirk faltered. As he registered Ryan's furious approach, Ethan coolly said, "Dr. Parker, what do I owe the interruption?" Ryan slammed the folder onto the table, scattering pages that showed still images from the footage and Jenna's transcribed confession. In a low, furious voice, he accused, "You've been poisoning her, Ethan, keeping her in that coma so you can take control." Murmurs spread throughout the room as suits shifted uncomfortably. Ethan's eyes narrowed, yet his smile remained razor-sharp. "That's quite a bold accusation, Doctor. Are you really that sure of yourself? Or are you just looking for attention?" Ryan tapped the photos with his finger, each image showing Ethan discreetly handing off the vial, while Jenna accepted a $5,000 bribe to drug Lila. "Sound familiar?" he said. Ethan leaned back, arms crossed, coolly replying, "Creative storytelling, but you're out of your league. One call to the board and your career is over. You're nothing here." Ryan stepped closer, his voice lowering to a dangerous growl. "Try me. I've got copies of everything. Tapes, files, witnesses. You're finished. I will protect her, no matter what you throw at me." Ethan's smirk vanished, replaced by a hardened expression. Rising to his feet and looming over Ryan, his voice dropped to a hiss. "You're a dead man walking. She's my sister and my business. You really think you can touch me? I already have." Ryan shot back, unfaltering. "The cops will get you next if you don't back off." A tense silence fell over the room, the air heavy with unspoken threats. Ethan's jaw twitched as his eyes flicked from the scattered papers back to Ryan. Finally, with a sneer, he grabbed his coat and said, "Enjoy your little crusade, Doctor. It won't last." Brushing past, he left as the door slammed behind him, leaving Ryan surrounded by stunned onlookers. Breathing out, adrenaline still coursing through him, Ryan gathered the scattered papers. The confrontation had been a gamble. He'd revealed his hand and made an enemy, but it was a risk worth taking. Ethan now knew he was exposed, and that gave Lila a fighting chance. Ryan left the lounge quickly, folder clutched like a weapon, and headed back to the intensive care unit. The storm from earlier had cleared. Sunlight streamed through the windows as he entered Lila's room. She lay there with closed eyes, her breathing steady through the ventilator. Pulling a chair close, he placed the folder on his lap and leaned in with a firm, gentle tone. "I won't let them hurt you anymore." His hand brushed hers, a touch so delicate it belied his resolve. Though her fingers didn't move, he could sense her fragile yet fierce presence. Ethan might retaliate, but Ryan was ready. This was war now, and he would win it for her. The ICU no longer felt like a prison. Its sterile walls were softened by the golden light of the late afternoon sun filtering through the blinds. Lila's bed was now slightly reclined, the ventilator replaced by a nasal cannula that whispered oxygen into her lungs. She had been awake for a week, her recovery progressing slowly from the brink of oblivion. Dr. Ryan Parker stood by her side, clipboard in hand, but his attention was solely on Lila. Her once clouded eyes now shone with a delicate clarity, and though her voice was still rough and faint, she had begun to speak. Clearing her throat, she managed a raspy "water," prompting Ryan to set the clipboard down and retrieve a cup from the nearby tray. Guiding the straw to her lips, she took a careful sip, wincing slightly, then nodded in gratitude. "You're getting stronger," he said with a small, genuine smile as he settled into the chair beside her. "In just a few more days, you'll be bossing me around." A ghost of a smile played on her lips as she replied, "I already am," each word a labored breath. Ryan chuckled, the sound easing the tension in the room. Lila had started speaking in broken fragments 2 days earlier, single syllables squeezed out between coughs that gradually formed into full sentences. Every word she uttered felt like a hard-won victory. While he quietly updated the staff on her stable vitals and guarded her privacy, the threat from Ethan still loomed in the back of his mind. But right now, his focus was solely on Lila. She needed him not just as her doctor, but as something more. He reached for a small towel and dabbed her forehead, noticing her skin was cool yet clammy from the effort of waking. "Tell me," she rasped, locking eyes with him. "Why you?" Ryan paused, the towel hovering in midair, then said, "Why me? But really, why fight for me?" Lowering the towel, he leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees, and replied, "Because you're worth it. Someone tried to bury you, and I couldn't let them win." A flicker of raw emotion passed through her eyes as she turned her head slightly, staring up at the ceiling. "No one ever cared," she whispered, her voice thick with pain. "My life was empty, filled with family liars. I didn't want to wake up. Ryan's chest tightened. He had suspected that her coma wasn't just about the drugs, but about surrender. "What changed?" he asked softly. She met his gaze, her eyes piercing despite their weakness, and simply said, "You." That single word hung in the air, unguarded and heavy. Ryan held her stare, feeling the profound truth of her admission. He had been her anchor when she was slipping away, and now she was reaching out for him, and he couldn't turn away. Days turned into a steady routine of recovery. Ryan guided Lila through physical therapy, steadying her trembling arms as she gripped the parallel bars. Her first steps were unsteady, her legs weak after months of disuse, but he was always there to catch her. His constant murmur of encouragement, "One more time, you've got this," echoed in the room as she pushed herself, sweat beading on her brow, and he beamed with pride every time she succeeded. In the evenings, long after his shift ended and the nurses had stopped questioning his extra hours, he'd bring a deck of cards or a book to keep her mind engaged. Most of all, they talked. He shared stories about growing up in Queens, about the scholarship that got him through medical school, even about the time he crashed his bike into a dumpster and just laughed it off. She listened, her rough chuckles growing louder each day, and gradually she opened up. "My father controlled everything," she admitted one night, her voice growing clearer, though still husky. "My mother died young, and Ethan was always jealous. He wanted it all. I built the company on my own, and no one cared." Leaning closer, Ryan gently placed his hand near hers on the bed and said, "I care. You're not alone anymore." Her eyes softened as a single tear slipped down her cheek. She wiped it away, embarrassed, but he held her hand until she relaxed, their conversations weaving a bond between his relentless hope and her hidden strength. Sometimes he caught her watching him with an expression he couldn't quite decipher, and his heart would race unexpectedly. One evening, as the room glowed with the soft amber light of dusk and the city hummed in the background, Ryan sat cross-legged on a chair, recounting a disastrous cooking attempt from his med school days. Lila laughed, a deep, genuine laugh, and he grinned, savoring the sound. As she shifted, wincing slightly, he moved to help adjust her pillows. "You're really good at this," she said in a quiet, steady voice. "At what?" "Telling bad cooking stories." She paused, locking eyes with him. "No," she replied. "You make me feel alive." Ryan's hands stilled on the pillow, and the air seemed to thicken with something new. She reached out, brushing her fingers along his in a deliberate, gentle touch. "You're the reason I wanted to live again," she said, her voice cracking with emotion. His heart pounded as he listened, caught in the raw honesty of her words. Instead of pulling away, he slid his hand over hers, their fingers intertwining as his thumb traced the contours of her knuckles. "Lila," he began, but the words faltered. She leaned forward just a bit, and he met her halfway in a tender, silent surge. He carefully pulled her into his arms, mindful of her fragility, but holding her with unwavering strength. She melted into him, resting her head on his shoulder while his face pressed into her hair, the familiar scent of hospital soap mingling with something uniquely hers. They stayed like that, wrapped in silence, the world fading away until all that remained was the steady beat of their hearts, a bond that had grown beyond patient and doctor, protector and protected. It was simply them, together, and unmistakably in love. Outside, the courthouse steps shone under the harsh glare of camera flashes as reporters buzzed around like flies. Lila descended the stairs with a determined stride, leaning on a cane. Even 3 weeks after leaving the ICU, she looked like a shadow of her former self, thinner and paler, but with eyes that burned with a fire Ryan had come to know well. Walking beside her, he maintained his pace, his jaw set as he clutched a manila folder of evidence that now served as a legal weapon in the hands of their attorney, Rebecca Moore. Today, they were taking Ethan down, piece by piece. Inside the courtroom, a space of polished wood and hushed tension, Lila sat at the plaintiff's table in a crisp, dark suit, her gaze fixed on her brother across the aisle. Ethan lounged in his chair with a smirk, flanked by his slick lawyer exuding confidence. Ryan took the seat behind Lila, his hands clenched with determination. When Rebecca began presenting the case, listing charges of attempted murder, fraud, and a conspiracy to seize Lila's empire, the security footage played on a screen. Ethan's shadowy figure was unmistakable as he handed the vial to Jenna, followed by her recorded confession. His lawyer scrambled to object, but the judge, a stern woman with silver hair, leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. Rebecca then called Lila to the stand. With her cane tapping the floor, Lila recounted her raw testimony: 6 lost months, her brother's betrayal, and the drugs that had kept her silent. Every word resonated with truth, swelling Ryan's chest with pride. When she finished, Ethan's lawyer attempted to twist her story, claiming it was just stress and a misunderstanding, but the judge was unmoved. "We'll recess until tomorrow," she declared, and Ethan's glare shot venomously toward Ryan. Outside, chaos erupted. Ryan shielded Lila from the press as he guided her to a waiting car, all the while feeling the weight of countless eyes upon them. Although Ethan's gaze had already confirmed that they'd won the day, the battle was far from over. That very night, Rebecca called with news. The prosecution was pushing for a lengthy jail sentence. Lila managed a rare, fierce smile, and Ryan squeezed her hand. "He's finished," she said, and Ryan nodded, believing it. The next morning, the trial resumed and the verdict was delivered swiftly: guilty. Ethan's face twisted as handcuffs clicked onto his wrists, his threats drowned out by the murmuring courtroom. Lila exhaled deeply, leaning into Ryan as relief washed over her. Yet as they left the courthouse, the atmosphere grew unnervingly quiet. Too still. Ryan's instincts flared. He pulled Lila closer and scanned the crowd. Suddenly, he spotted a hulking figure in a hoodie, barreling through the reporters, heading straight for them. "Lila, get down!" Ryan shouted, shoving her behind him. The attacker swung a fist, but Ryan ducked. Adrenaline surged as the man lunged again, revealing a glint of metal, a knife. Without hesitation, Ryan threw himself forward, tackling the assailant, even as a sharp pain seared his arm from a grazed blade. He grunted, pinning the thug's wrist until security arrived and hauled the man away. Amid the chaos, Lila screamed, clutching Ryan as he staggered back, his sleeve now soaked with blood. "Ryan!" she cried, her voice breaking. Forcing a grin despite the pain, he reassured her. "I'm fine, just a scratch." But she wasn't listening. Her fingers trembled as she pressed her scarf against his wound, her face pale with worry. The crowd parted as paramedics rushed in, and soon they were in an ambulance. Lila refused to leave his side. Hours later, the story exploded on national television. In a studio, Lila sat with her cane propped against a chair, her voice steady, as she faced the cameras. "My brother tried to kill me," she declared, unflinching. "He drugged me, stole my company, and sent someone to finish the job. I'm here today because of one man, Dr. Ryan Parker. He saved me, and I'm taking back what's mine." The anchor listened in stunned silence as Lila recounted the truth. Her recovery, Ethan's treachery, and Ryan's courage. By morning, the board had rallied behind her, and public support poured in. That night, Ryan lay in a hospital bed at St. Augustine's, his arm wrapped in bandages, with a dull ache beneath the gauze. The door creaked open, and Lila slipped in, swapping her suit for a comfortable sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. Carrying a tray with water, a cloth, and a small first aid kit, she said softly, "Your turn." Raising an eyebrow, Ryan replied, "So now I'm the patient?" "Exactly," she said, sitting beside him. Dipping the cloth in water, she gently wiped the sweat from his brow, her touch tender and reminiscent of the care he had given her weeks before. "You scared me today," she murmured, her eyes glistening. "I can't lose you." Ryan caught her hand and pressed it against his cheek. "You won't," he promised in a rough voice laden with emotion. "I'd take 100 hits for you." She leaned in, resting her forehead against his, their breaths mingling as the room faded until only the two of them remained. Roles, reversed, with her tending to his wound and him shielding her heart, they forged an unbreakable bond. In a penthouse with towering windows offering a sweeping view of the Manhattan skyline, Lila Green now stood at the edge, her silhouette sharp. In a tailored blazer, fully recovered, 3 months since the trial, she moved with renewed strength, every step a testament to her resilience. Ryan Parker leaned against the kitchen counter, a beer in hand as he watched her with a quiet ache. Though she had reclaimed, her empire and her name was splashed across headlines. The media had recently turned against them. Tabloids were relentless, spewing insinuations that a millionaire was merely dating a doctor, portraying their relationship as one of convenience and scandal. Scrolling through his phone that morning, Ryan read comments that cut deeper than he cared to admit. Claims that he was just being used, that he was in over his head. Doubt crept in like a slow poison he couldn't shake. Lila caught his gaze. "You're quiet tonight," she said, crossing the room in a smooth, probing tone. She had ditched the cane weeks ago, walking with confident grace, yet her eyes softened. When they met his, Ryan set his beer down and forced a smile. "Just tired from a long shift," he replied, not entirely truthful. She tilted her head, unconvinced, and sat beside him on the couch, her knee brushing against his. "Ryan, talk to me," she urged. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "It's nothing, just the noise from all those people saying things about us." He hesitated before adding, "They say you're only with me because I'm some charity case." Lila's eyes flashed with anger as she countered, "They're idiots, you know that, right? Look, you're a billionaire genius with the world at your feet, and I'm just a guy with a stethoscope in a rent-controlled apartment. Maybe they're right, maybe I don't belong." She stared at him in shock before leaning in, her voice firm. "Do you think I care about that after everything we've been through?" Ryan looked away, his throat tight. "I care. I just don't want to drag you down. You deserve someone who's on your level, not just some tabloid headline." His raw insecurities spilled out, clashing with the deep love he felt. Then pacing and finally bursting out, he said, "Maybe we should take a step back, let you breathe." Lila's eyes widened, then hardened as she grabbed his arm. "No!" she snapped, her tone cutting through his spiral. "You don't get to decide for me. Listen, before you, I was dead inside. The coma wasn't everything. You gave me my life back, and now you want to walk away because some keyboard warriors say I'm not enough." Her voice shook with both fury and pleading desperation. "You are everything." Ryan's breath caught as her words sank in, though a stubborn shadow of doubt lingered. Noticing it, she set her jaw and said, "If you need proof, watch this." The very next day, Lila held a press conference. Backstage, Ryan stood with his arms crossed as she faced a sea of microphones in a sleek downtown studio. The room buzzed with reporters and cameras, all drawn to the power of her name. Wearing a simple black dress that commanded attention, she spoke clearly about Dr. Ryan Parker. "Let me be clear, he's not just my doctor or my boyfriend. He saved me not with money, but with his heart. He risked everything to pull me out of hell. I'm here because of him, and I love him for it." She paused, locking eyes with Ryan in the crowd. "So say what you want, we're not going anywhere." Despite shouts, clicks, and gasps, Ryan barely heard a thing. Her words washed away the noise. Stepping off the stage, she strode straight. To him, her gaze steady. "Do you believe me now?" she asked softly, a challenge hidden in her smile. Ryan pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her as the world faded to just the two of them. Yeah, he murmured into her hair, his voice thick with emotion. I do. She pressed her hands to his chest, and in that moment, any lingering doubt was replaced by the certainty of their love. Louder than any criticism, they left the studio hand in hand, the city's roar a distant hum. The backlash would eventually fade, the gossip would grow tired, but they had committed to a life above the noise, and nothing would break them. Outside, the air carried the scent of spring, blossoming trees and fresh earth. Under a simple wooden arch in a Brooklyn park, Dr. Ryan Parker stood nervously with his hands clasped in front of him. A year had passed since that press conference, and now, at 29, he wore a plain grey suit with no tie and his glasses slightly fogged by the breeze. In front of him, Lila Green walked down a makeshift aisle decorated with wildflowers. Her white dress flowed softly, and her smile was bright as she appeared radiant at 33. Gone were the days of past excess. Now she was simply a woman in love. The ceremony was small and intimate. Only about 20 guests, mostly Ryan's old med school friends and a few loyal staff from St. Augustine's. There were no cameras, no fanfare, just the quiet rustle of leaves and gentle, heartfelt vows. They exchanged promises they had written themselves. Ryan vowed to stand by her through every storm and silence, while Lila promised to build a life together that wasn't defined by wealth, but by the strength of their bond. When they kissed, the applause was soft, a quiet cheer for a love that had weathered so much. Afterward, they didn't jet off on an extravagant honeymoon. Lila had bigger plans. 2 weeks later, in her penthouse office, Lila signed documents that dissolved most of her fortune, billions redirected into charities for education, healthcare, and women's shelters. The tabloids called it madness. She called it freedom. She kept just enough to live comfortably, and the empire she had built was no longer her prison. Ryan watched as she signed the final document, his hand resting on her shoulder with pride. "Are you sure about this?" he teased lightly. With a grin, she replied, "I've never been more sure." They moved into a modest brownstone in Queens, trading the skyscrapers for a backyard with a patchy lawn. Their real work began a month later when they cut the ribbon on the Nan Lee Clinic, a small brick building in an underserved part of the borough. Ryan had dreamed of a place where anyone could walk in for care without worrying about insurance or endless questions. And Lila made that dream real. Her business savvy turned his vision into reality. She handled the books while he cared for the patients. Together, they transformed a forgotten street into a lifeline. The clinic buzzed every day with children suffering from colds, elders with aches, and families who had never seen a doctor before. Ryan moved through exam rooms in a hoodie instead of his white coat, his laugh echoing as he patched up scrapes or listened to raspy lungs, while Lila sat at a desk outside, scheduling appointments and charming donors with her quiet determination. Their teamwork was seamless. One cool evening, as summer faded into fall, they stepped onto the clinic's small porch after the last patient had left. The sky blazed with orange and pink as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows on the cracked sidewalk. Ryan leaned against the railing, his arm gently brushing against Lila's, while a cup of coffee cooled in his hand. She stood beside him, her hair catching the light and a loose scarf draped around her neck. "Life is busy, but right now, it's just us," he said softly. "It's all worth it," she replied, meeting his warm, certain gaze. Every second, she slid her hand into his, their fingers interlocking, his calloused from hard work against her softer skin. "We did this together," he whispered with a slow smile. "Yeah, we did," she agreed. They stood there, hand in hand, watching the sunset paint the world gold. The clinic behind them was more than just a building. It was their promise, a testament to everything they had overcome. No coma, no betrayal, no scandal could touch them now. They had shed the weight of wealth and doubt to build something real, something they could call their own. The horizon stretched out endlessly, and as the last light faded, Ryan pulled Lila close, her head resting against his chest. Their love had carried them past every obstacle and would keep moving them forward, unbroken, into whatever came next. The sun sank below the horizon, leaving a soft glow over the porch of the newly named clinic, where Ryan and Lila stood with their hands still entwined, a living testament to love's quiet power over chaos and greed. From that stormy night, in the ICU to this golden dusk, their journey had woven a story of courage, trust, and a bond that no force could shatter. As stars began to twinkle in the sky, they turned back inside, ready to face tomorrow's challenges together, their love a light that would never fade. If their story moved you, if you believe that a young doctor's bold defiance sparked a miracle and a billionaire rediscovered her soul through his care, then don't miss out on more unforgettable journeys.